Good evening. I am so excited to be here this evening. I can very genuinely tell you there is nowhere I would rather be tonight. One of the most exciting things for Dale and I is to speak at universities, to speak to people your age. We speak to all kinds of different people in different churches, but this is our favorite group of people to talk to. And one of the reasons is we're talking about the death penalty, but we're talking about our lives too. We're talking about how in the world did this couple end up, doing this ministry together. And that's part of the story. At this juncture in your lives, no matter what age you're at, there's a real important decision. And it's, how do I make every major decision in my life? And some people have said to Dale and I, how did you two find each other? How would two people actually want to do some of these things that you all are doing together? And the answer is that whether I was choosing to go into a religious vocation or whether I was looking for the vocation of my life as a lay person, what's the most important compass to figure out where to go and what to do? And if my decision is, Lord, I want to be willing, I want to be made willing to be wherever or do whatever it is that in this big kingdom you need me to be doing. Where is the puzzle piece that you need for me? And I found out that when two people have that as their primary question in life, He really can do powerful things in those two people's lives. And for anyone here that is in a religious vocation or looking forward to a religious vocation, you are the kind of people that my husband and I came to when we said, are we crazy? We hear Jesus calling us to all kinds of exciting things. Are we crazy? And the reason that we could step forward was we had wonderful spiritual advisors. And they said, no, you really hear this clearly. Go slowly. They told us to watch our children because they would be our barometers, that we weren't going too fast. We received wonderful spiritual guidance. So whether you are looking forward to a vocation as a layperson and you're wondering, what spouse will I choose that will also want nothing more in this world than to just find out what God wants us to do. So that's why this is such an exciting group to talk to. And as Dale and I made those questions, and he took us to exciting places, one of the things he did for us is that neither one of us had to be afraid to dream and ask hard questions, because as a marriage, we realized God only called us to a future if He called both of us. He brought us together in marriage as two people becoming one. So that meant unless both of us felt strongly called to take a step, that it wasn't a time to take that step. And that freed us up to consider and talk about all kinds of exciting things. We didn't have to be afraid the other person would run off to Africa if the other one wasn't ready and feeling called to Africa. And that allowed God to use us. So about 15 years ago, if you had asked me, what ministry will you be doing? I didn't have any idea. I was just trying to listen to God and figure out where He wanted us to go. I did not ever imagine that He would have me sitting in the living room with a mother whose son had just been murdered. I would never have dreamed that He would have me sitting in a church at 6 p.m. as her son was being executed at that very moment. But He did call me to sit in those two living rooms. And when I was going through the execution, of the very first family that Dale and I were ministering to during an execution. As I was sitting with the mother after her son had been executed, and I saw her devastation, I watched her tears and her grief. I saw his brothers grieving at what had just happened in the last few minutes. I realized I have seen this grief before. Where have I seen this grief before? That mother's grief was the same grief of the mother whose son had just been murdered. Both of those mothers had held their son that morning. They'd hugged him and he was fine. And now he was dead. And he had been killed by a human being on purpose. And the horrible, horrible grief of those mothers surprised me. I don't know, I've never thought about it, but both of those mothers were suffering a terrible, terrible loss. I wanted to tell you, because we don't have a lot of time, there have been a lot of families, but I wanted to share with you very briefly about two families. One was a woman, she and her husband had just moved here from another country. They were well-to-do, they had never had any involvement with the law. They were over here, and they were having dinner one night out in a restaurant. The police came up and arrested her husband, this woman's husband, and they took him to jail. They said he had murdered someone. Well, both of them thought this is just a really bad dream. In the next day or two, they're going to find out who really did this murder, whatever it was, and everything's going to be okay. But the dream turned into a nightmare because it didn't go away. They put the man through a trial, and he was found guilty of this murder. His wife, that I met years later, had been there every single day of the trial. But then the nightmare got even worse. They went to the sentencing hearing, and they gave him the death penalty. When I met this woman, she had visited her husband through 18 years, as often as she could. She had written her husband a letter every single day for 18 years. I was in awe of this woman. She taught me something. She taught me what my marriage vows really mean. To love and to cherish. In sickness and in health. In good times and in bad. I was honored to meet this woman. But the hardest execution that I've been through with a family was a very large family, and we were shocked that so many of the families were so large. This particular family had an elderly mother and father, a large number of brothers, grandchildren, but there were several daughters in their 20s. And when they had come into town a week before the execution to make their final goodbyes, I was really worried about these girls. They were so sweet. They were several of the sweetest girls I had ever met. Their mom had a lot of problems, and she had abandoned them when they were very young. And their dad had been their parent through all these years. He had always been there for him. Even when he had gone to prison, he was always there. He wanted to know, who are you dating? Is he treating you good? What are you studying in school? Tell me about your marriage. Tell me about your husband. Tell me how your career is going. I want to understand how your children are doing. He had always been there, and these girls were devastated that their father was about to be killed. I was worried, and usually with most families, I would be with them just during the evening, during the time of the execution. But because I was so worried, I asked special permission from the prison if I could be at their last visit with their dad. Usually Dale was there, but I thought I should be there too. And I was right. That morning they said goodbye was that bad. All of the family had time to say goodbye to their loved one, but the girls had special time alone, each one with their dad. Dale took each one over across the hall to the special room where they would see their dad and say goodbye. And in every case, they just kept hanging on to their dad and crying. And Dale had to literally peel them off their dad as they were screaming, "Daddy, Daddy, don't let them kill you." Dale didn't really walk these girls back to me. He pretty much carried them back. And at that time, I hadn't really heard the kind of grief that I heard from these girls. And maybe you have heard it before. There's a grief where someone cries from way down deep. It's kind of like a wail. And I heard that in each of these daughters. When they got back to the kind of lobby area where all the family was, one of the girls was talking to me as her other sister went back across the hall with Dale to say goodbye to her dad. And she just looked at me crying and she said, "Why do they have to kill him? Why can't they just leave him in prison for the rest of his life?" And this is a question I've had so many families ask me. I have been honored to meet each of these people that I have told you about, and many, many more. And the biggest lesson that I have learned is that every time there is a killing, whether it's a murder or it's a legal execution, every time someone is killed, there's an entire innocent family that is being harmed. And as Pope John Paul II said, when he was expressing in St. Louis, Missouri, his belief that the death penalty is a pro-life issue, he said that the death penalty is cruel and unnecessary in a country such as ours. And I know that the agony that I have seen in these mothers and fathers and daughters was also cruel, and it was unnecessary. I want to thank you for being here tonight. Thank you.